How do we deal with a posterior plate which is just refusing to crack? Hi, I'm Dr. Deepak Meguram, coming here with another very difficult case. He is a 75-year-old gentleman who has this black cataract, almost a grade 5, grade 6, and that's a challenge. Thankfully, the cornea seems to be good. The visibility is not so much hampered. So begin my surgery. The surgery is being done under topical anesthesia, perform the side port incisions and stain the capsule. Although it's ideal to have a large rhexis, I've got a rhexis of 5 mm, which is not ideal for this case. So let us see how things turn out. Time to do hydrodissection. Very little amount of fluid is used to perform the hydrodissection, and immediately after injecting the fluid, I just decompress the lens and try to see that there's no buildup of the pressure. And before starting the emulsification, I just want to confirm that the nucleus is free from detachment to the capsular bag. So with the chopper, I press down on the nucleus and then gently rotate it, just to ensure that all the corticocapsular adhesions are broken. So once I'm certain that the nucleus, which is predominantly the major part of the content in the bag, because these eyes don't have any cortex, is truly free from its attachment to the capsular bag, and now is the time to perform the phacoemulsification. The strategy which I'm going to decide is I'll be doing either the stop and chop or the 4-quadrant technique, depending upon the density of the nucleus which I see as I go in. As is customary for us, to begin with, we always go in with the epinucleus mode, try to shave off all the superficial epinucleus in the cortex, and once the underlying nucleus is laid bare, now is the time to perform the sculpt maneuver. So initially I'm going with 90% continuous torsional energy. The nucleus is stabilized with my second instrument, that is a chopper, and here I begin my sculpting procedure. So as soon as the first groove is made, I realize that the nucleus is quite tough. So 90% torsional is not going to be good enough for this case. So I asked my assistant to increase the power to 100%, and with the 100% power on, I'm begin my sculpting. As I'm trying to go deeper, I feel there is some obstruction to the sleeve, so I come back, widen the groove a little bit so that it gives me access to the deeper core. So in these cases, I think patience is what one needs to have. So it is going to take a lot of time. I'm mentally prepared that this case is going to take at least half an hour. So let me see how things turn out. Since the nuclear density is too hard, I have decided to do the 4-quadrant technique. So the nucleus is rotated 90 degrees and I'm going to create another trench 90 degrees to the original trench. After a few strokes, the nucleus is rotated 90 degrees and the original groove is further deepened. So my goal is to have at least 90% depth in these trenches. So again, to minimize the stress on the zonules, I'm stabilizing the nucleus with my second instrument, and the fourth groove is being done now. The superficial part of the nucleus is first grooved and then progressively deeper part is then grooved. I just want to widen it just a little bit. We don't want to have very wide grooves, then it becomes very difficult to laterally separate them. At this point, I'm just coring the center part of the nucleus. I just want to go in as deep as possible. And as I rotate the nucleus, I feel that every trench is now more superficial. So progressively, all the trenches, I'm going to deepen it. The deepest part is going to be in the centralmost area where the posterior plate is the thickest. So I'm trying to focus well, visualize well, and then go and try to trench. A care is to be taken that we're not shoving or pushing at the nucleus. Adequate power is to be used to effortlessly melt the nucleus material in front of the tip. So now I realized that the depth could be good enough. So now I decided to go ahead and start the dividing maneuver. So as a modification, instead of using just the two instruments passively to lateral separate, I'm going to use a chop mode where I'm going to engage the phaco tip, so one of the nuclear fragments, and then do the lateral separation. I believe that with a stronger hold, it will be much more easier to break the tough posterior plates. So I'm just trying to get a hold on the fragment with my phaco tip, and the lateral separation is being done. At this point I realize there is a loss of grip, so again I go in and redo the same thing. The lateral separation maneuvers ensures that the fragment is separated until the center, but the central point there is still some attachment. Hopefully it gets broken subsequently. The nucleus is rotated, time to separate the second fragment. Again the same maneuver, one part of the nucleus is held, a second part I'm just trying to negotiate the chopper as deep as possible and then do the lateral separation. Well, I'm able to feel that it's quite tough, and even after multiple attempts, the central point of attachment could not be separated. The nucleus is then rotated. I'm attempting the third split or the third separation now. I'm trying to find a hard spot so that I can engage my phaco tip very firmly and then lift up the nucleus and then do lateral separation. I'm just engaging the phaco tip. So this part I'm just struggling here because I'm not able to get a very good hold. Nevertheless, I'm trying to find some part where I can hold it firmly. And again 90% of the lateral separation could be completed, but the central part, the posterior plate, is just refusing to give way. This is the last split which I'm attempting, the fourth split. So again the central part is being still held at. So I'm trying to pass the chopper underneath and cut, but it seems to be a little bit risky as the posterior capsule is in close vicinity. So I just lift up one of the fragment up with its tail still attached to the central point. I want to emulsify this superficial part so that I can create some space. Now with the chopper I'm just trying to go down deep and trying to undercut this fragment. The chamber is shallowing, so I come out, re-inject some OVD. I'm trying to inject some intracameral mydriatic agent like phenocaine just to help me out with better pupillary dilatation. OVD is again re-injected into the eye. The dispersive OVD goes in first, followed by HPMC. Since the pie-shaped fragment is out, so now we can take care of the central point of attachment of the posterior plate in a different way. As I have been telling in my previous videos as well, the best way to deal with this attached posterior plate zone is to flip it up and directly phaco it, rather than attempting to separate it in the bag itself. So I'm going in with my Senscuke and just flipping out the nucleus with all these attachments in the central part and bringing it up into the safe zone. Now it is significantly far off from the posterior capsule. Now I have got direct access to the central point of attachment to the posterior plate. I'm just going to use the sculpt mode. I'm just using the torsional ultrasound with very low vacuum and flow rate, and lo behold, easily you could just separate the attachments of the posterior plate and all these fragments. So rather than attempting to do forceful lateral separation in the bag, this is one trick which I would recommend, but this is possible only when one of the fragment is out. So now is the time to emulsify these large and hard fragments. Each of them is pulled out of the bag and very carefully emulsified. So this is again one large fragment here. I'm just going to use the cutting ability of the torsional ultrasound to emulsify this dense fragment. The amount of energy which is delivered is controlled linearly by the foot so that the amount of turbulence chatter is very much minimized. Only thing is we need to just go in a little bit slow so that the fragments are not chattering around and hitting the corneal endothelium. So the large fragment could be emulsified quite effortlessly. Before I emulsify the last fragment, time to replenish some OVD again. I'm going in with my dispersive OVD first, followed by HPMC. The last fragment is again emulsified in a very controlled manner. Care is taken that the fragment does not leave the phaco tip at all. It just dances around the phaco tip, eventually getting completely emulsified. Rest of the steps are routine. There is cortex aspiration and implantation of the lens into the bag. So let me rewind and go take you through few key moments in the surgery. The first thing is the rhexis wasn't as big as I would have liked. Probably at half a millimeter or 1 millimeter extra would be ideal. Gentle hydrodissection is extremely critical. Ensuring that the nucleus is truly free from its capsular attachments is mandatory, because most of these eyes have very loose bag and a thin capsule. Now, coming to the nucleus management aspect, sculpting as deep as possible ensures that we break the core of the nucleus, that is the backbone of the nucleus. So that is extremely critical. In this case, I decided to do the 4-quadrant technique. I had 90% depth, but still you could see the amount of stressful maneuvers which were required to break the posterior plate, which was almost just 10% of the thickness of the entire nucleus. But one trick to follow in these cases is there would always be a central point of attachment, which would be very difficult to break and also quite risky to go very near. In these situations, the trick here is to get rid of one fragment out. You've got enough space there, and then inflate OVD into the bag, and then maneuver the central part of the posterior attachment of the posterior plate up anteriorly, so that we have access to phaco directly. This zone of attachment, in India we can call it as sangam. So as if the three pieces are coming and meeting here, so this part, this union, we can have direct access and then emulsify at great ease. And once it is, all these three fragments are broken, then it behaves like a routine case. So flip up the nucleus. So emulsify this part, which is the union of these three fragments. To summarize, to answer the question which we began with the video, how do we deal with this posterior plate which is refusing to crack? Well, the answer is simple. Just flip it up and phaco. What I mean by this is maneuver the attachments of the posterior plate to the safe zone and just phaco. But this is possible when we have ample space in the bag. Typically, this is possible after removing at least one piece out of the bag. In this case, this pie-shaped fragment was out, so we had enough space. Then move this union point that is holding these three fragments together. This point of attachment of the posterior plate has to be maneuvered anteriorly. Now flip it up to the level of the capsular access margin, which is a safe zone. And then we are breaking this bridge which is holding these three fragments together by using phaco ultrasound energy. It is very easy. So this is a safer way to deal with these tenacious posterior plate than trying to separate them manually, which we traditionally do with your phaco tip and the chopper, which can be quite stressful for the bag and the zonuos. So that was it. Thank you for watching and hope you found this helpful.